Russian dictator Vladimir Putin showed disrespect to U.S. presidential special envoy Steve Whitkoff by making him wait 8 hours before inviting him to the Kremlin for a meeting. According to Sky News, Witkoff's visit to Moscow lasted 12 hours, according to videos posted online of his motorcade leaving and returning to Moscow's Vnukovo airport. Moreover, the U.S. President's special representative spent most of these 12 hours waiting while Putin met with the unrecognized President of Belarus, Alexander Lukashenko. Witkoff, a former real estate magnate who became Donald Trump's chief negotiator, was sent to Moscow to present Putin with the American proposal for a 30-day ceasefire, the reporter said. His visit was scheduled for earlier this week, after U.S. Ukraine talks in Saudi Arabia. But when he arrived in Moscow, Witkoff had to wait 8 hours before being invited to the Kremlin. During this time, the Kremlin dictator was busy meeting with Lukashenko, who suddenly arrived in Moscow. It is obvious that Putin could have interrupted the meeting with the head of the Belarusian regime, especially since he sees him regularly anyway, and invited Witkoff for negotiations. But apparently he deliberately did not do this in order to emphasize his arrogance. The dictator had previously been repeatedly seen behaving in this way during meetings with other foreign politicians. In turn, Trump's national security advisor, Michael Waltz, commenting on Witkoff's visit to Moscow, declared cautious optimism regarding the issue of a possible 30-day ceasefire. He did not go into details of the negotiations themselves and said that it was up to the US president to do so. However, the only thing that can be said is that there is hope for cautious optimism in the matter of a temporary ceasefire. Initially, it was planned that Witkoff would hold a meeting with Putin. It is known that the meeting with the Russian Federation representatives took place in the building of the U.S. Embassy in Russia. This was already the second visit of Trump's special representative to Moscow. Waltz said that when concluding both a truce and peace, both sides of the conflict must make concessions to each other. This is called shuttle diplomacy.
UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer has told global leaders to keep the pressure on Russian President Vladimir Putin to back a ceasefire in Ukraine. According to Associated Press in his opening remarks Saturday to a virtual gathering of what he has termed the Coalition of the Willing, Starmer said Putin will, sooner or later, have to come to the table. The call is expected to delve into how countries can help Ukraine militarily and financially, as well as gauging support for any future possible peacekeeping mission.
Good morning, colleagues. Can I just start by thanking you all for making time for this important meeting this morning. We've got a lot to discuss because since we last met in person in London just under 2 weeks ago, a lot has happened, particularly in the last week. So it's very important we catch up to move forward. I think what this week has shown, particularly the developments and progress on Tuesday, is that President Zelenski, who's with us this morning, has shown once again that Ukraine is the party of peace, because he has agreed to and committed to a 30-day unconditional ceasefire. Now what we see, and this is centrepiece for our discussion today, is that Putin is the one trying to delay. And in a sense, and you all know this, if Putin is serious about peace, it's very simple. He has to stop his barbaric attacks on Ukraine and agree to a ceasefire. And the world is watching. And my feeling is that sooner or later he's going to have to come to the table and engage in serious discussion. But, and this is a big but for us this morning in our meeting, we can't sit back and simply wait for that to happen. We have to keep pushing ahead, pushing forward, and preparing for peace, and a peace that will be secure and that will last. And I think that means strengthening Ukraine so they can defend themselves. and strengthening, obviously, in terms of military capability, in terms of funding, in terms of the provision of further support from all of us to Ukraine. Secondly, being prepared to defend any deal ourselves through a coalition of the willing. We've begun that process, and this morning we can take it forward. And then thirdly, and really importantly, given the developments of the last few days, to keep the pressure on Putin to come to the table. And I think collectively we've got a number of ways that we can do that. And so it's those three heads really that we're going to focus on in this meeting: strengthening Ukraine, being prepared to defend any deal ourselves through a coalition of the willing, and keeping that pressure on Russia at this crucial time.
Spain's Defense Minister Margarita Robles received her Ukrainian counterpart Rustem Umerov in Madrid on Friday. According to Associated Press, Umerov was welcomed with a full honors tribute on his arrival to Spain's Defense Ministry, ahead of his meeting with Robles. He will also hold meetings with 6 Spanish arms production companies. During a news conference, Robles expressed her support for Ukraine and said, in reference to the negotiations for a ceasefire with Russia, that the ball is in the Russia's court. The responsibility has always been Russia's, but at this moment they have made a proposal supported by the United States and they are waiting for what Russia says, she added. Umerov expressed thanks for the support that Spain had given Ukraine over the last 3 years.
Desde el principio de la terrible y cruel invasión de Ucrania por parte de Putin, España ha estado prestando firme apoyo a Ucrania. Y vamos a continuar apoyándoos en vuestro proceso de paz para conseguir una paz justa y duradera.